That's mine right there. Yeah, I own you and you own me. I will kill everybody in here about your ass. Please understand that. Some days I'd be willing to trade my man for a really good what?
Pool boy.
A good what?
I'm sorry.
What did you just say?
3 days before she got married to Steve Harvey, we talked. And she told me, she said, Jimmy, she said, Jimmy, you know what, Steve, he's so much like my dad, you know?
I've never seen them have anything that I ever wanted. If you sign up for their program, you get a light-skinned, weird-faced wife.
So it looks like Katt Williams might have been right about Marjorie Harvey. She was there as part of the contract, and now the contract has expired, allegedly. So the blogs are saying Marjorie is done with Steve, and there are even rumors going around that she's been sneaking around with her staff, including a bodyguard and a chef. And while Steve is now denying the cheating rumors, Marjorie is staying quiet, which is kind of weird since she is the one who is being accused of having an affair. But to people who are familiar with Marjorie's story, none of this is surprising, because this is the same woman who bounced from one convicted kingpin straight to another, only to loop back around to Steve and talk him into accepting her kids while pushing his own biological ones to the sidelines. Mind you, the way Marjorie got Steve is hella sneaking. Steve first crossed paths with Marjorie back in 1990 at some comedy club, and they always tell this story about how he looked her dead in the face and told her he'd marry her someday.
But I kid you not, the first word I ever said to her was, I don't know who you are, but I'm gonna marry you one day. That's the first thing I said.
Sounds cute, right? Yeah, except Steve was still legally married to his first wife, Marcia, when he was making marriage promises to a random woman at a comedy show. And Marjorie wasn't feeling struggling comic Steve back then because he was not about that brokey life. So instead, she went and locked down not one, but 2 kingpins. Meanwhile, Steve and Marcia had 3 kids, twin daughters Brandy and Carly, plus a son, Broderick. But here's where it gets sticky. Marcia later claimed Steve was out here cheating with multiple women and allegedly left her while she was still pregnant with Broderick. So Marcia filed for divorce, and when Steve decided alimony and child support were optional, she dragged him to court. According to Radar Online, back in 1995, Steve was ordered to pay Marcia $5,100 a month. But about a year later, Marcia filed another complaint saying she hadn't seen a single cent. But Steve didn't care. By that point, he was already shacked up with Mary Shackelford, the woman who'd become wife number 2. But Steve eventually did marry dirty just like he did his first wife, so she decided to expose everything. And Mary claimed that Marjorie pushed Steve's biological kids to the side while forcing him to play daddy to her children from 2 separate dealers, Jim Townsend and Darnell Woods. You see, Marjorie has a daughter, Morgan, and a son, Jason, with Jim Townsend, plus daughter Lori with another dealer, Darnell Woods. And somehow, Steve officially adopted all 3. And while Steve has 4 biological kids of his own, a lot of people have noticed that he gives Marjorie's kids preferential treatment, especially his favorite, Lori. Marjorie and her first kingpin husband, Jim Townsend, weren't just married. She reportedly got her hands dirty too, earning herself the grimy little nickname, Lady Nose Candy. And while Jim was eventually sentenced to 26 years in prison, Marjorie somehow escaped all charges. So after Jim got locked up, Marjorie filed for divorce and moved on with someone who could sustain that high life. And that was Darnell Woods, another kingpin and Lori's biological father. Marjorie and Darnell got married in 2000, right around the time the FBI started sniffing around Darnell for smuggling. And it was like history repeating itself. Darnell was sent to prison shortly after the wedding, and right after that, Marjorie decided it was time to reconnect with Steve. By then, Steve had actually made a name for himself in the industry, so Marjorie thought it was the perfect moment to give him a chance. Funny how that works. But here's the catch. Steve was still married to Mary, and they had a son together, Winton. And allegedly, Marjorie started quietly scheming about how to get Steve to ditch his wife and accept her kids as his own. Spoiler, Marjorie's plan worked. Steve married her in 2007 and officially adopted all 3 of her children. Steve didn't care that Mary held him down during his come-up, helped him launch multiple businesses, and was there through the struggle. The second Marjorie slid in, Steve dropped Mary, kicked her out of their house, and left her with absolutely nothing. And get this, Mary also claimed Steve was unfaithful and said it was disturbing how fast he traded her in for Marjorie. And honestly, she's not wrong.
When I think about how quickly he moved forward from me to Marjorie, That was disturbing.
But what's even more messed up is that Steve allegedly took Mary's son Winton and turned him against her. And according to Mary, Steve used his money and celebrity status to manipulate the legal system and get custody of Winton.
He took my Winton. Took my Winton from me. He turned my son against me. Had me evicted from our house. Thrown out. All the businesses, all the money, the cars. At a moment when I was down and devastated, he maneuvered everything. He manipulated the courts, everything against me. He went to court and under oath said that on his own he had built this whole thing by himself. And I just sat at the table and cried. I cried through the whole thing, and I fell apart.
But that's not even the worst part. In another recent interview, Mary claimed that Steve treated Winton like a dog and allegedly inflicted severe punishment on him on the regular. According to Mary, when Winton was just 10, Steve attacked him so badly just because Winton lied about doing his homework. This all reportedly went down after Winton was already living with Steve and Marjorie, and Mary said she was absolutely shocked when she saw the marks on her son's body. As for whether Marjorie had a hand in it, Mary said she wasn't sure, but something tells me that house might have more than one villain in it.
Because what I think about, was he scared? Who was hitting him? Was it her? Was it him? Was he out of his clothes? Was he screaming? Because he couldn't have had clothes on for his back to get cut up like that. And even at 10?
Mary said that to this day she can't forgive herself for not being there to protect Winton, but Steve and Marjorie basically made it impossible for her to get close to her son.
Was he thinking about me? Was he calling to me in his head? And how can you shame a young man like that when they're going into their manhood to strip him down like that, and you just beat him till he bled? How do you take a belt and you wrap it around your hand with the buckle part hanging? You're beating him with that. So much so, I saw an impression of that buckle inside of his thigh to where it must have just wrapped around him like a whip.
Now, this story was quickly swept under the rug, but the authorities were actually notified about the incident with Winton. And according to the police report, Winton told officers that he had trouble using the bathroom for days after what Steve did to him. However, Steve allegedly again used his influence to escape consequences, and the case was closed with no further investigation. Now, this really makes you wonder how Marjorie, as a mother, just stood there and watched Steve do that to his own son, especially at that age. Well, according to Mary, it's because Marjorie is just as cold and heartless as Steve, and allegedly, she was the one who turned Winton against his own mother in the first place, most likely so Steve wouldn't have to pay child support to Mary.
I know that as a mother, if I was ever in a position to where I had to be in charge of somebody else's child, I'd definitely make sure they have a great relationship with that child, but I just don't see how Marjorie, in particular, can call herself a mother to her own children and deliberately try to sabotage my relationship with my son. I don't really get that, because personally, you know, even if it was a vengeance vendetta thing, it's like, who did harm to who?
And then on top of all that, reports recently surfaced claiming Steve's 3 biological children, Brandy, Carly, and Winton, always felt pushed aside while Steve dumped all his attention on Marjorie's kids, especially Lori. An insider close to the Harveys spilled to Radar Online that the Harvey household is far from the picture-perfect family they try to sell us. Apparently, there's a lot of tension behind closed doors, because Marjorie and Steve allegedly give all their love and attention to Lori, while the other kids are ignored. And according to the same insider, Marjorie rules the roost at the Harvey house. But it looks like it's all now coming back to bite Steve, because the blog and blind items are alleging that Marjorie has been cheating on Steve for years with the help. And allegedly, she even had an affair with Steve's longtime bodyguard, Big Boom. And while these are just rumors at this point, fans online are already saying this just proves Katt Williams was right about Marjorie and Steve when he called them out on Club Shay Shay. You know the clip. Katt claimed that this is all part of the industry program. And if you're a black comedian trying to make it big in Hollywood, that program allegedly includes a light-skinned, weird-faced wife who's there to control you.
I've never seen them have anything that I ever wanted. If you sign up for their program, you get a light-skinned, weird-faced wife that never do an interview. Listen, in 20 years, won't do an interview. Nobody's ever talked to her, and that she's never been interviewed anywhere. And now, understand, I'm not talking about one person. What I just told you applies to 7 people.
And then Katt also brought up how Steve left his first wife for Marjorie, but now he wants to rewrite history and act like Marjorie is the one who was with him when he had nothing.
Thanks to my wife, I'm where I am. You said that about the first wife. You forget that? You told us it was her, then you went and married somebody else that think like a man. Like, what are you talking about? They think they can rewrite history.
Now here's the thing. Whether those cheating rumors about Marjorie have any truth to them or not, she's quickly becoming one of the most disliked wives in the industry. Because let's be real, you can wrap yourself in all the designer gowns you want, but at the end of the day, she still got involved with a married man. He still left his previous wives. And she was all up in criminal activities. And now both of them want to sit up on couches and give us relationship advice? Yeah, no. But I want to hear what you think down in the comments. Do you believe Steve's ex-wife Mary that Marjorie is the one pulling all the strings behind the scenes? And what about those cheating rumors? Do we think Marjorie is really sneaking around with members of her own staff? Drop your comments below and stay tuned for the next video.